Here's Cunningham, the pull-up. Got it!
Okay. Welcome back to another edition of the Scorching podcast. I am your host for today, Dylan Delaney, and NBA draft one day away. Normally this time of year, I'm actually excited. I'm looking forward to the draft. I've been doing my research because most of the time, my team has sucked. But this year's different. We got the 29th pick this year, so we're in the back half. We're in the back half now. We ain't got to worry about the front half this year. We're no lottery, none of that. But I still got to do my due diligence because I'm still a fan of the NBA, still a fan of all 30 teams. You guys still keep up. So at the end of the day, do your due diligence, and boom, I got my first round ready to go for my mock draft. Probably a good analysis of the first 14 picks lottery, and then we'll just kind of bang out the rest of them afterwards. But without further ado, let's just get right into it. We'll start off. I feel like the first 4 or so should be fairly easy to tell. I feel like those will go really quick in the draft. I feel like those are all kind of no-brainers at this point, barring any trades or surprises. And I didn't put any trades in my mock draft. These are just as a current order, so I have a good feeling that a lot of these are going to be different when it comes time for the draft to come, or throughout the course of the draft. I feel like there's going to be a lot of picks that are going to be swapped. So we're going to just go with what the order is right now. Starting off with Detroit basketball. Detroit Pistons got the number 1 pick. I think they would be stupid to not select Cade Cunningham here because I feel like he's the most complete player in the draft, and I have them selecting Cade Cunningham here. In comparison to last year's draft, I feel like Cade Cunningham is probably the most complete player we've seen since like Zion, or like the most, no, I wouldn't say the most complete, but the most hyped up player since Zion, because I feel like Zion has a much different game than Cade Cunningham does. There's really not a lot more to really say about him. Like, you saw last year what he did at Oklahoma State. Like, he was a boss. He just killed everybody that he was up against. There's not really a lot of holes in his game entering the NBA, so Detroit's getting a good one in Cade Cunningham. There's really not a whole lot to say about him. But I'm just going to move on to number 2 here, Houston Rockets. After the weird season that the Rockets had with the whole James Harden trade dilemma, they were able to get into that number 2 pick. I'm going to have them taking Jalen Green here. I feel like that's a good replacement for James Harden in the long run. It's going to be really interesting to see how, if Jalen Green indeed does go number 2, which I think most of us agree that he's going to. If he goes number 2 and pairing him up with Kevin Porter Jr., that's going to be really fun to watch from an offensive standpoint. From a defensive standpoint, probably not as much. I would say, as far as this draft class goes, Jalen Green is the most complete scorer in this draft class. Just from all 3 levels, he goes out and just gets it done. Whether that's driving to the rim and just finishing through contact, whether that's 3-point shooting, whether that's creating off the dribble, like Jalen Green just does it all. If his defense can match that offensive intensity, then he's going to be an absolute force in this NBA to watch in this upcoming years. I think him going to the Rockets, I think that's a good fit because, Houston's not expected to contend for anything anytime soon, or at least within the next couple of years. Just give him time to work out the kinks in his game and kind of focus and hone in on that shot selection that he wants to move with going forward, and going with that, just going with that and just being the elite scorer that he is. I think that it's great that he fits in Houston. We're moving on to number 3, Cleveland Cavaliers, back in the top 5 once again. I got them taking Evan Mobley here. I know that Cleveland has a lot of big men right now. I don't know how many of them are really going to stick around, especially guys like Kevin Love and Larry Nance. I don't expect them to be sticking around much longer in on the Cavs, especially considering how they're not going to probably be contending again this year. But they got a nice little nucleus of young talent going on. I know that Colin Sexton's being thrown around in trade rumors right now too, but you still got Darius Garland, who improved a lot last year, and you got Isaac Okoro, who looks like he's going to be a staple for that team for years to come. Adding Evan Mobley, who's without a doubt the best big man in this draft, would make this Cavaliers team a lot more fun to watch, I think, too. I know that also they did have KPJ and they let him go, which, don't give your locker away if you really don't want that to happen. But from a big man standpoint, he's a perfect stretch 5 option for this team. He can extend the floor. He's got 3-point range. he's very athletic for his size, and he's able to just get it done consistently on both ends, interior, exterior, you name it. He can keep up with the guys. He's athletic, he's active. He's got a really good post presence for his age too. Not a lot of big men coming into this league have a really good post game right away, and I feel like Mobley's is different. Especially taking a look at guys like DeAndre Ayton who balled out in the playoffs. I think noticing that you need to be able to have the big man that's going to be able to not only defend interior, but to be able to stretch out to the exterior and guard some of those smaller players and be able to keep up with them. I'm not saying he's going to be able to keep up with every single guard in the NBA. No big man I feel like is designated with that task, but Mobley's active enough where he would be able to stretch out onto the floor, guard the perimeter, especially in today's NBA where you have most centers are able to go and stretch out to that exterior and shoot from the perimeter. So I think from a talent standpoint, especially in Cleveland's case, where they should just probably be taking the best player available, Mobley should be top of their charts if both Green and Cade Cunningham are gone, which I expect them to both be gone at that time. So pencil in Mobley for number 3. Number 4, Toronto. Toronto's a weird case because Toronto is a good team still. Even though they missed the playoffs, they're still a good team. Don't let this last season fool you. They will be back in the playoffs next season. But they probably won't be there with Kyle Lowry because I feel like Kyle Lowry's days in Toronto are kind of numbered. Which is why Jalen Suggs would be perfect here. You kind of bring him to be your new franchise point guard. And I think in a lot of ways he's kind of similar to Lowry when it comes to the energy that Lowry brought to the game. I feel like Suggs, his motor is incredibly high. You saw in the Final Four run that Gonzaga had this year. Aside from the championship game, which wasn't his best showing, you could see in that game against UCLA, he was all over the place. That block shot and the missile that he had down the floor to Drew Timme for that dunk with about 2 minutes left. Obviously hitting the game winner in that same game. He's a very complete prospect for a point guard. Obviously, he's not on the level of guys like Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, and stuff like that. But I would say that, he's still, for a point guard, very athletic. You saw him throwing down dunks on everybody, and, he can get to the rim and finish through contact, which is really good for a guy that his age as a point guard. He also does play solid defense on the defensive end too, because that motor, like I said, that motor and that athleticism kicks in, so he's able to pick up full court on some of those point guards as well. So I think from a pure lineup standpoint, this makes probably the most sense for Toronto here to pick Jalen Suggs number 4. They could look into a guy like Scotty Barnes or Jonathan Kuminga here, but I feel like Jalen Suggs is probably the right pick for them. And I feel like that's how it's gonna end up going, unless they make a trade and end up getting a big time player in exchange for that number 4 pick. Outside the number 4, this is, I feel like, where things start to get a little murky. I think 5, 6 should be pretty set in stone as well. But after that, everything's kind of like a fair game. I feel like everything from 7 onwards is, you don't really know what's gonna come about that. So give your best shot. I'll take my best stab at it. Number 5, I got the Magic taking Scotty Barnes here. Magic are not also competing for anything anytime soon, but having 2 top 10 picks this year, 2 top 8 picks for that matter, that's very big. That's very big for their rebuilding standpoint. Considering, like I said, not competing for anything anytime soon. You got your young guys like RJ Hampton and Cole Anthony that are probably going to be taking most of the reins, especially with Jonathan Isaac coming back next year too, because we don't know how Jonathan Isaac's going to be. You have no idea how he's going to recover from that torn ACL. So picking Scotty Barnes here is interesting, considering I don't think from a potential standpoint he has the potential of some of the guys that are below him, like Jonathan Kuminga or James Bouknight. But I think right now he comes in just NBA ready. I've seen a lot of comparisons being thrown around him, kind of like a Ben Simmons or a Draymond Green type player. Obviously he's not coming in the best shooter, but he does everything else exceptionally well. Defensively he can guard 1 through 5. He's 6'9". I'm not sure. I think he's like 220. So he's got the NBA ready body. Like I said, defensively he's coming into the NBA. He already is. I think he's going to be on par with what people expect out of that. Outside of that, like I said, shooting does need work. The playmaking is what a lot of people are intrigued by too, and I agree with that. I feel like his playmaking for a guy his position, his size, very, very above average. And something that's going to be interesting to bring to that Magic team, especially where, Cole Anthony and RJ Hampton, they're good playmakers. They can create their own shot, but I feel like they're also more of like a scoring guard at the end of the day. I feel like those are guys that are more they're going to go out and get their own buckets. They're going to create their own shot. Whereas Scotty Barnes can probably create his own shot later on further down his career, but he's going to be able to create shots for others, which is going to be big for that Magic team as well. So I think Scotty Barnes is the right pick for them. Like I said, they could go in a different direction and take somebody with a little bit more potential. But I think Scotty Barnes would be a good fit in Orlando. Moving on to the OKC Thunder, number 6. I got them taking James Bouknight out of UConn. And I feel like the fit might be a little weird at first, putting him with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, because let's face it, and I got to put this out there, Shai's not getting traded in this offseason, any sort of offseason anytime soon. The rumors of him and number 6 and Shai for the number 1 pick, there's no way that's real. There's no way. This time of year is perfect for these fluff rumors to get it out there. There's no way Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is getting traded from the Thunder anytime soon. Admittedly, the Thunder aren't going to be competing for anything anytime soon, which could irk Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but I just don't think he's getting traded anytime soon. But that's enough about that. James Bouknight is a scorer. He is a scorer. I love the way he drives to the rim. He embraces the contact. He had a couple of really nice posters this year at UConn, really shouldering the scoring load for that team. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Zach LaVine. You know, he's a majority shooting either inside, like a kind of the driving instincts that he has, I feel like are very similar to a guy like Zach LaVine. You know, he's great at creating contact, and he's long too, which helps him. You know, his wingspan's above average, so that helps him around the rim, obviously. Defensively could obviously use a little bit of work, but I feel like that will come. You know, he's going to have to build up, I think, a little more strength as well once he gets to the league. But, you know, basically we all know this season's kind of like a lost season for the Thunder. They got Kemba Walker right now, but I don't think that Kemba Walker is going to be in their long-term plans. He's probably going to get dealt relatively soon, actually. So having Bouknight and Shai in the backcourt, I feel like that's very, very tantalizing for Thunder fans. Like I said, they could also go in a different direction here and grab a guy on the wing, because they could use some wing players as well. But I think from a potential standpoint, I think James Bouknight is a really dominant player offensively, and I feel like that's going to be too much for Sam Presti to pass up on. Which moves on to the Warriors, and the Warriors might honestly not have this pick. I mean, they could trade both of their first-round picks. We really do not know what's going on with the Warriors. They've been linked to Josh Giddey from Australia a lot, but I'm going to have them taking Jonathan Kuminga here. I feel like his potential is going to be too much for the Warriors to pass up on. And I know that they kind of had that similar issue last year with James Wiseman. You know, they had the second pick. They took Wiseman, and everyone's kind of expecting him to come out right away and be the guy. And it didn't really happen expectedly. You know, it didn't really happen the way I feel like Warriors fans wanted it to. Which is okay, because James Wiseman is still 20, 21 years old, and he's raw. He still has a ton of potential. He's going to be fine. And I think that, you know, Warriors fans might be a little bit skeptical about taking a guy like Jonathan Kuminga when they just got through with this experience in Wiseman's first year. But I think in Kuminga's case, while he is raw, he does provide probably, from a potential standpoint, it's like top 5 potential in this draft. You know, top 5 career potential, I'd at least say. I mean, you know, he's a good finisher for his age. Obviously, his game still needs a lot of polishing from a shooting standpoint. From a defensive standpoint, he's got an NBA-ready build for the most part. He's 6'8". He's like around 230. So he can make an impact defensively. And I think that, you know, with the Warriors probably not getting back Kelly Oubre Jr. because he doesn't seem to want to take on that bench role, and the Warriors may be passing up on Andrew Wiggins as well, because who knows if they are trying to get a trade going on with a superstar, because they've been heavily linked to basically any sort of star that's on the market, given what they have to offer. Kuminga could be interesting just to pick him up and then maybe flip him in a trade, or if they really want to keep him and develop him, just have him come off the bench this year and give a couple minutes here and there. And I would think about giving Josh Giddey a look here, but I don't think that it makes the most sense from a Warriors standpoint. I feel like for Giddey's standpoint, we'll kind of get to him. His game, I feel like, doesn't really translate to what exactly the Warriors are going to need. And I feel like Kuminga has the ability to be one of those switchable wings, which are super super important in the NBA. I mean, you saw in these past couple of finals runs, if you have switchable defensive wings, your team is going to be able to go far. And I think that picking up Kuminga would be more prevalent for the Warriors in that sense, because you have guys like if you keep Andrew Wiggins, Andrew Wiggins is considered one of those. If you keep Juan Toscano Anderson could be considered one of those as well. So I think taking a wing here would be more impactful for the Warriors, especially since you have Jordan Poole too. And I really like Jordan Poole, and I think he's going to have a really good season when he gets more minutes next year as well. So we'll talk more about the Warriors when it comes to their 14th pick, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they don't have that pick as well, because they'll probably do something with it, I think. But we're back to the Magic with number 8. And don't get me wrong, the Magic could actually do something with this 5 and 8 too. Because they've been linked to Cleveland, moving up. So Magic could do something 5 and 8 here. Like I said, I'm gonna have them just kind of taking the best player available, and that's Moses Moody in my opinion. I think Moses Moody would be good for this Magic team. He's a really good 3-and-D guy. He played over at Arkansas this year. His tournament run wasn't the best, but his regular season play was really strong as well. He's a solid 3-and-D guy. He's got a solid IQ as well. He's got a very high basketball IQ. I shouldn't say solid. But he is a solid playmaker as well. So I think you're getting someone who's offensively ready for the NBA. He's not going to go out of his way and hoist up bad shots like some of these other prospects in the draft, but he's going to be reliable, I think, on both ends. I think his length and his size are really interesting from a prospect standpoint as well, defensively. Which, I mean, and at this point, like I said, the Magic need to basically just kind of hone in and take whoever's best available. They could give a big man a look here, too. I mean, they could give guys like Alperen Sengun and Kai Jones maybe looks, but I think they're just going to go best player available. My personal opinion would be Moses Moody, but never know. Moving on to the Sacramento Kings. They're weird. Sacramento's a weird team. Sacramento's just weird, but I like them. I like them, though, because I like Tyrese Halliburton, I like De'Aaron Fox. I think they're going to move on for Buddy Hield. I think taking a big man would probably be the best move, but they could also look into a wing. I'm going to have them taking Alperen Sengun, though, and I don't know if I might be butchering that name. I really don't know. If I am, I apologize. But he's kind of like the home run shot, I think, of the draft. I think that, like, watching him play overseas, he has a lot of... he's got a lot of interesting film, but we don't. You also said that about Dragon Bender. You also said that about Dragon Bender. I mean, I feel like guys from overseas, obviously you got guys like Luka who have been massive hits, and you got like Dragon Bender who is a massive miss as well. But watching him, his playmaking is something that's really, really intriguing. Kind of like a Nikola Jokic, but on the skinnier side. Which I think he's going to have to build up some more strength if he's going to play the center position, because he's a little bit undersized right now. But from a playmaking standpoint, his game is really intriguing. Really intriguing. He tends to be a little bit too flashy at times, which kind of hurts him. But he is able to drive, and he's got a good enough handles where he can drive to the rim and kick out, which is a big man that's really strong, especially since he can stretch the floor. Not the best shooter, but he still makes you give an attempt at the end of the day. Defensively, great rebounder. Actually, offensively he's a great rebounder. Defensively could use a little bit of work, but offensively he's a good rebounder. Watching some film, he just kind of fights for those offensive boards, and he's got some pretty nice touch around the rim, so he's able to just put them right back up and in. I think that's a good look for Sacramento. I think with what they have right now for big men, Marvin Bagley's probably not coming back because they just keep talking about trade talks with him. Rashawn Holmes is a free agent, so not really sure who that leaves left for Sacramento as far as big men goes. And I think that, obviously I don't think that Sengun's a talent that's going to be ready for the NBA right away, but I think that he's somebody who, if he's developed properly, he could be a real impact player in the NBA. And obviously Sacramento doesn't have the greatest track record of developing prospects, but they had a really good draft last season, so there's hope, I think. I think with Monty McNair, I think there's hope in Sacramento for the most part. So they could give Sengun a look. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave guys like Corey Kispert or Franz Wagner a look here as well. But yeah, that's why I got the Kings taken. I believe in Sengun. And if I'm saying your name wrong, I apologize. Number 10, Grizzlies. Um, and now we'll touch real quick about the trade too. I like that trade for both teams. This Memphis New Orleans trade. I like that trade for both teams. I think that I think from a Memphis standpoint, I think you downgrade a little bit by taking on Steven Adams instead of Jonas Valanciunas. I think for Ja's sake, I feel like that would be really fun to play with, though, because the screens that Steven Adams are going to set is going to be awesome. Bledsoe's probably getting shipped off somewhere else. But you get the 10th pick in the draft, though, so you get somebody who's going to be more of an impact player for your team, maybe. So from a Memphis standpoint, I can understand it. From a New Orleans standpoint, I really like this move because you upgrade to Jonas Valanciunas as your center. Jackson Hayes just got arrested today, too, so who knows what's going to happen with him. You downgrade to the 17th pick, which is, meh. I think in this case, who I have them taking in my mock draft, I think it'll actually work out for the best. But you also free up a lot of cap space, too, because you've been mentioning the Kyle Lowry rumors. Kyle Lowry apparently to New Orleans is something that could be happening. Regardless if you don't get Kyle Lowry, having more cap space is going to be more beneficial for this year anyways. You can go out and sign impact players. And I trust Willie Green. Willie Green was in Phoenix. He's a Valley boy. I trust Willie Green to be able to right that ship over in New Orleans. They got a talented roster. You got Zion, you got Brandon Ingram. Those are two guys you can easily work with. We don't really know what's going to happen with Lonzo Ball. We don't know if he's coming back or if he's out the door or not. But you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's really good too. So that's just a little tidbit on there. I feel like it's a weird win-win trade for both teams, but only time will tell. But back to the Grizzlies, I think that they're going to take Josh Giddey here. And at first, I think it's going to be a weird fit because he's not the best shooter. Which is something that Memphis, I feel like, will desperately need in order to fill a lineup out with John Morant, considering that, the best shooter that they're probably, the best two shooters that you're playing with are Kyle Anderson, who did rapidly improve last year, I'll give him that, and Dylan Brooks, he takes every single shot, and he likes them. He likes taking his shots. And Jaren Jackson as well. Jaren Jackson, we have to wait. He's going to wait and see how he does this year. But Josh Giddey, he's a very, very, very good playmaker for his age, and he's 6'8", too, which is, the size advantage definitely plays in as well. Memphis has been linked to him, so I feel like that's a really good spot for him to land right next to Ja. He doesn't have the pressure to go out right away and be, the guy who's going to create offense for others because they got Ja. But having both of them in a backcourt would be something that's interesting to move forward with. And I feel like his shot is something that can be improved on moving forward too. I don't think that there's anything that needs to be drastically changed about his shot. I think that if you just it's just a little mechanic work, and I think they can relegate him from being a guy who shot 28% into a guy who shoots 38%, which is improvement. So I think they give him a look there. Yeah, that's Josh Giddey. After that, we got the Charlotte Hornets. The Charlotte Hornets have been heavily linked to Kai Jones, and that's who I'm going to have them taking here. I think from a Charlotte standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. You get a guy who's very athletic, and he's very good on both sides, whether that's interior on offense or defense. He's a great shot blocker. Great shot blocker. He uses the athletic ability to his advantage. He's a great rebounder as well. There's obviously he's one of the more raw big man prospects, which is acceptable. I think that happens a lot. But he can stretch the floor too. He can stretch the floor. He's a solid shooter. He's not the greatest 3-point shooter, but with a little bit more consistency, he could stretch it and be a nice 5. And I think Charlotte's one of the teams that, they have a solid young core right now. You got guys like LaMelo, you have P.J. Washington, you have Miles Bridges, Terry Rozier. They don't really have they have Cody Zeller, but that's not the most solid big man option. If you can find an upgrade in the draft, you might as well take it. And I think that Kai Jones could be a long-term upgrade from Cody Zeller if developed properly. So I think that taking a chance on him would serve well here for Charlotte. I think that that's a guy who they need to lock in on. Moving on, San Antonio. San Antonio, I originally had them taking Sengun, but then I wanted Sengun moving up to Sacramento because I thought Sacramento would take him. I have them take another kind of foreign prospect. He played in Michigan, Franz Wagner. His case is kind of weird because he had a solid season at Michigan, but he's not the best shooter, and I feel like that's what San Antonio needs. but I also feel like he's already like a very sound player. Watching him, he reminds me a lot of Kyle Anderson. He reminds me a lot of Kyle Anderson, and which bodes well for San Antonio because they drafted Kyle Anderson a couple years ago. Um, but he's a good playmaker for his size, and apparently, according to him, he's 6'11" now, which is if he's really a small forward and he's 6'11", that's gonna be a huge mismatch offensively and defensively for that matter too. But like I said, the playmaking is there for his size. He does need to become a better athlete, especially he's going to have that 6'11" frame, and the shooting does need to improve as well for Wagner. And like I said, the Spurs are kind of in a weird spot where apparently they want to look at trading guys like DeJounte Murray or Lonnie Walker, which I don't think are the right move for them moving forward. Could be heading for a full-blown rebuild, so maybe looking at other guys here, like Zaire Williams. Zaire Williams could be in play here. You could look at a guy like Isaiah Jackson, I guess, for if you want a solid big man. Or if one of the other guys I previously mentioned is available. Could go with that as well. So I feel like for his case, I feel like San Antonio would be a good spot for Wagner. I think that he would be a good fit in San Antonio. He's not going to have the pressure to go out right away and, develop like rapidly. He can be able to take his time a little bit. Moving on, this one's kind of weird. Indiana's a weird team to look at right now. They got the 13th pick. They just hired Rick Carlisle. I don't know what they're trying to do from a standpoint because they have a solid roster. They have a solid roster, and they could definitely go one or two ways with it. They could be like, hey, we can flip them on a Sabonis and get a top 10 pick and kind of start this rebuild and build around guys like Karis LeVert. Or they could try to go all in and try to, build for a more extensive playoff run, which they haven't really done yet. They haven't been able to kind of build on any sort of playoff success yet. I have them taking Corey Kispert here because I think they're going to lean more towards the second option. Kispert's a guy who's pretty NBA ready. He moves great off the ball, and he's probably the best shooter in this draft. And I'm assuming the Pacers are going to lose Doug McDermott in the offseason. I don't think that he's going to be back. So replacing McDermott with kind of like almost like a clone of him in Corey Kispert might be a solid move here for them. If they want to go off a pure potential standpoint, Zaire Williams, Keon Johnson, Jalen Johnson could be options here. But I think that they're going to go Corey Kispert if he's available here. Kispert does have some stuff he's got to improve on, like his athleticism. And he oftentimes when watching Gonzaga, he kind of let people blow by him, just any sort of quicker guards. So he's got to improve on the defensive end, I think, a little more. But from a shooting standpoint, he's kind of everything you want. He moves great off the ball. If somebody sets that screen for him, he's got the quick release that he's gonna be able to just pull the trigger right away. So I think that for the Pacers, looking at a guy like Kispert would be good if you're actually serious about doing another playoff run. But who knows? Who knows with them? And then we're back to the Warriors again with pick number 14. I have them taking Davion Mitchell here, or Davion Mitchell. He's a guy who could also go a lot higher too. I had him slipping a little bit here, but it wouldn't shock me if he went a little bit higher here. He's a great defender. The only problem, he's a little bit undersized, but like I said, great defender. He shot the ball really well last year at Baylor. You saw in that championship game, he was hounding Jalen Suggs all game long. For Mitchell, he's a great shooter as of right now. He improved a lot throughout the course of his college career. He shot the three-pointer like a 44% clip last year, which is vastly improved from his previous years. And for his size, he's very quick and he's very strong. So he comes into it with some great, physicality. From a physicality standpoint, he comes into it great, but he is a little bit undersized. For his size, he's quick and he's strong, but he's also a little bit undersized at 6'1". So I think that for Golden State, looking at a guy like Mitchell, who's going to be able to be kind of a 3-and-D guard off your bench, put him right alongside Jordan Poole, little bench duo right there. That'd be a pretty solid option for them. But like I said, I don't think that Golden State's going to have this pick, though, at least. I think they're going to do something with, at the very least, 14 and move that somewhere else. So we're outside the lottery now. I'll just go down the rest of my first round, and I won't go into too much depth with all of these. 15, Wizards, I have them taking Keon Johnson out of Tennessee. 16, the Oklahoma City Thunder taking one of my favorite prospects in the draft, Zaire Williams. I think Zaire Williams is going to end up being one of the steals of this draft. He did not have the best season at Stanford last season. He shot around like 38% from the field and 29% from the three. But I think that that's going to translate really well actually over to the NBA. He was kind of focused in as like the primary option on our right Stanford team. He's very, very comfortable from the mid range. Very, very comfortable from the mid range, especially when it comes to creating a shot, especially off like the pick and roll. I think that he's got a lot of really interesting attributes in the NBA, and I think that a team like OKC would be perfect to take him because he's a guy who you can just let develop. You don't have to worry about plugging him in right away and worrying about winning games. Like you can let him develop on his own. And another thing I like about Zaire Williams that he can stay with the defenders on defense. He's got active hands. He often disrupts a lot of passes in transition. So the only thing that is going to stop him from being a very good NBA player is his consistency because he's overall especially dating back to high school and dating back to his time at Stanford, he is a very inconsistent player on both ends, which will hurt him if he can't improve on that, obviously. But I'm pretty confident in him. I feel like that's something that he's going to be able to work on in the NBA, and I think that he'll turn into one of the more consistent scoring options for the Thunder in the future, if, of course, they take him. Moving on, Pelicans, like I said, this pick I think makes a lot of sense. Chris Duarte from Oregon. He can be plugged in right away as a 3-and-D guard. He's obviously on the older side at 24, which is, I feel like, a reason why some teams might stray away from him. Kind of the same reason why I feel like some teams might stray away from Davion Mitchell, too, because he's already like 22, 23 years old. But there's not really a lot of flaws in his game. There's really not a lot of flaws in Duarte's game. I would say maybe his ball handling needs to get a little bit better, but he'll be able to get plugged in right away and play an NBA rotation. If a team that's like a perennial playoff contender trades up, it would not shock me at all if they decide to trade up and draft him instead, just because I feel like he's another guy who could definitely go earlier than 17. He's a guy who could probably make his way into the lottery as well. So from New Orleans standpoint, I think that's a solid option as well. Shameless plug, drink some more water. Drink more water. It's good for you. Got it. From there, OKC, Usman Garuba at 18. Number 19, I got the Knicks taking Isaiah Jackson. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially if they're losing Nerlens Noel in free agency, to have a guy come in and be very impactful in the interior on both ends. Unfortunately, that's really where his range kind of stops. He doesn't really have much of an exterior game on either end. He relies a lot on his athleticism too, so if they can kind of polish his game up a little more, I think it'll be a lot more impactful for the Knicks. But I think that taking a big man here would probably suffice them best at 19. Wouldn't shock me if New York traded up either because they got 19 and 21. So I could see them maybe trading into like the back half of the lottery as well. Number 20, I got the Hawks taking Trey Murphy out of Virginia. Really good 3-and-D wing. He moved his way up a lot of draft boards recently. He'll be able to come play in right away in Atlanta, especially since for some reason Atlanta's thinking about trading Cam Reddish, which I don't know why they would do that. That's another one of those rumors I don't feel like has any sort of like realisticness to it. Cam Reddish was actually very, very good in the conference finals against Milwaukee. He played really well and held his own against some really good players like Chris Middleton. So trading him would be, it doesn't make sense. I could see them parting ways with a guy with like maybe Danilo Gallinari, but Cam Reddish I think is going to stay in Atlanta, and I think he's going to get joined by Trey Murphy. And I feel like because they can build on that wing rotation. That'd be a scary bench duo. That'd be a scary bench duo for them. Number 21, Knicks. I haven't taken Jalen Johnson. I think he's going to fall a little bit as well. I think Jalen Johnson falls a little bit in the draft, but he ends up in a good spot in New York. There's a lot of things in Jalen Johnson's game that I like too. He's a great playmaker for his height. He's 6'8". Obviously, his shot needs a lot of work, but I think that there's a lot of skill there from both an offensive and defensive standpoint, especially when it comes to, in transition. Good transition defender, good transition on offense. So there's some stuff there that I think is be really interesting to watch grow for Jalen Johnson's sake. 22, Lakers. And I think from here on out, it's basically all guards. This is just the bench guard area of the draft. Jared Butler from Baylor, I think, ends up in Los Angeles. Obviously, health concerns are there, but as long as he's good to play, I think that's gonna be a great addition for that Lakers team. You don't really know right now what's going on with the point guard situation. They want Westbrook, they want CP3. They're not getting CP3. Might get Westbrook. Don't think Dennis Schroeder's coming back, but regardless, I think you're going to need a guy who's going to be able to come off the bench and be able to handle the ball and play make in certain situations. He's a reliable point guard, but I don't know how much of a true playmaker he's going to be for others. He's a great shooter. Might be better off served as a shooting guard, especially since he's 6'4". But regardless, I think that would be a good pickup for the Lakers. They basically kind of take, in my opinion, whoever the best player is there, and I think that'd be Jared Butler from Baylor. 23, Rockets, and I love this pick for the Rockets. Sharif Cooper from Auburn. I think that if he can polish his game up, Sharif Cooper will be one of the steals of this draft as well. He was highly touted coming out of high school, ended up going to Auburn. He's a great playmaker and ball handler for his age as well. He's also very young, so it'd be solid for the Rockets to take a point guard right now who's not going to be playing in crucial minutes right away, especially for a team that's not going to be very good next year by any means. He definitely needs to improve defensively and shooting the ball. Those are definitely two black holes right now in his game. But finishing at the rim for a guy who's only 6'1", he's very, very well advanced at that. He's very, very strong at finishing at the rim, finishing against bigger defenders. So I think that some of those traits of his game are so well done that he could end up going maybe a little bit earlier, or he could fall back into the second round too. He's kind of a wild card when it comes to this draft. So don't really know what we're going to get out of him. He's kind of a wild card, but I feel like he's going to be someone who's very successful and has a really good NBA career as well. Could be wrong. No. 24, I got the Rockets taking Joshua Primo out of Alabama, I believe. Alabama. He's only 18 years old. He's a really good shooter. Not really much else to say about him. Kind of just develop him as well. I don't think that the Rockets will probably flip one of these picks too. I don't think that having 3 first-round picks in this year's draft will do a whole lot for that team. So I wouldn't be surprised if they shipped off in either one of 23, 24, or maybe both. Clippers, I have them taking Ayo Dosunmu out of Illinois. He had obviously a great year at Illinois. Steps in with a playoff team like LA. I think that he can come off the bench and give a couple minutes a game. Really bolster that backup point guard unit as well. The Nuggets, I love this pick. I got the Nuggets taking Cameron Thomas out of LSU. Cam Thomas he's an enigma. he is just a straight up shooter. That's all he does, and it might be a good shot, it might be a bad shot. He's just shooting, and I feel like the Nuggets have always had kind of like a effort mentality when it comes to drafting the past couple of years. You know, they took Michael Porter Jr. in the back half of the lottery when everyone knew that there was injury concerns there. They took Bol in the second round of the other year. So they kind of have an effort mentality when it comes to drafting. They're just like, yeah, we'll take a shot on him. And it's worked for the most part. I mean, Bol we haven't seen much of, but like Michael Porter is turning into a very, very, very good player. And I mean, in Cameron Thomas's case, like he's a very good scorer. He's very talented with the ball. Obviously, defense there's not really much there. But I think if he goes to a situation where he's not like shooting the ball 500 times a game, and he kind of gets put into a system where he's like he's on the bench, and he's on that second unit, he can provide a spark to a second unit's team when it comes to scoring. And I think that would be perfect for Denver because their second unit isn't the best when it comes to like creating shots. So having Thomas there would definitely help them. I think that would be a good fit for him. And I think if he can improve his shot selection and kind of hone in on taking the right shot, and if it's not the right shot, playmaking for your teammates, he could definitely have a much better than expected NBA career. But there's just that what if. There's that what if that he doesn't kind of lose that and he still just kind of hoists up whatever shot he likes. Kind of like the Dylan Brooks mentality. Like I mentioned earlier, like Dylan Brooks does not see a shot that he doesn't like. Cam Thomas is very, very similar when it comes to that, but if he can improve on that, that'll serve him much better. From their last 4 picks, they got the Nets taking Miles McBride out of West Virginia. He's just very solid on both ends, creates for others. I think he goes in perfectly in Brooklyn. 76ers, I got them taking Bones Highland out of VCU. He's kind of similar to Jared Butler. I'm not sure how much traditional point guard he's going to be for that team because I think that they could really use a backup point guard. Could use a point guard in general because who knows what the hell's going on with Ben Simmons right now. But I think that bringing him in, he's a really good shooter, which you definitely need right now off the bench, especially since Daryl Morey's had kind of an impact when it comes to bringing shooters to surround Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. So bringing in Highland here, I think would be a good move. My Phoenix Suns with the 29th pick. I'm gonna have them taking Quentin Grimes here. He's a really good 3-and-D guy, and I think he fits like that James Jones mold. Because let's face it, the past couple of years, Phoenix has like surprised everybody by taking Cam Johnson and Jalen Smith in the top 10, with nobody expected them to. And they've hit on Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson's a really good player. Cam Johnson's a very good player. And I think that Quentin Grimes could be kind of in that same scenario. I don't know how much playing time he'd get right away. And he's kind of uncomfortable attacking the rim right now. He doesn't have the best interior game, but exterior wise, shooting the ball, he shot about 40% on about 8 attempts per game last year at Houston, and he was a real leader on that team too when it came down to their Elite 8 run. So I think that taking Grimes here would be a good option for the Suns. I wouldn't be surprised if they took a backup point guard, a guy like maybe Trey Mann, if Ayo or Miles McBride or Jared Butler, Sharif Cooper, if any of those guys are still there, I wouldn't be shocked if the Suns took them as well to get another point guard, especially since you don't really know. Like, I'm pretty confident Chris Paul's coming back. Cam Payne is a different question. I think he's still gonna, but you never know. So bringing up another backup point guard might be a solid option to do there. And then the final pick in the first round, I got the Jazz taking Trey Mann, backup point guard, can fill that role. Coming out of Florida, had a really good second half to the season, a really good tournament run as well. He's a good shooter and a shot creator, and I feel like that's what the Jazz could use from the point guard position off their bench right now. So I'm going to pencil him in there. That's my first round. I didn't do any second round. I think some of the guys who I like in the second round, Josh Christopher out of Arizona State, Kessler Edwards out of Pepperdine. I think he's going to have a really good career. I think whoever gets him is going to get a steal. And BJ Boston out of Kentucky, I got faith in those three guys that they'll carve out some pretty long NBA careers. Probably some more, never know. But that's my mock draft for this year. Hopefully I do better than I've done in recent years. And yeah, that's really all I got for today. We got more stuff coming up on the way. If you like this, make sure you leave the like, comment, subscribe on here. Look at this channel. Podcast going to be up on Spotify, so go run that up as well. And yeah, thank you as always for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Scorching Podcast.